Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this session about the Observatory on Information and Democracy to be created. This is a session for mobilization for a key project about what should be the equivalent of the IPCC, but not for climate change in this case, but for the information chaos. The Partnership on Information Democracy started in this Paris Peace Forum in 2018 with a declaration by civil society, a support by 12 heads and governments. And since then, in 4 years, a lot have been achieved. First, a partnership on information and democracy about safeguards in the democratic safeguards in the digital space was signed by, today we will be able to announce 50 governments, 50 countries in the world. Then we have created an implementation body, a civil society implementation body, the Forum on Information and Democracy. It was here in 2019. Since then, this forum, this new entity, has issued 3 sets of recommendations, hundreds of recommendations for governments on the most important issues in the digital sphere regarding regulation. We also have initiated this work, and it was under the leadership of Angel Gurria and Shoshana Zuboff. Angel Gurria is the former head of OECD. Shoshana working with the current minister, and with Shoshana Zuboff, who is the author of The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And this observatory will be inaugurated in the next few months. We will say more about it. We have created a coalition of the civil society, and we have also the equivalent, if I may compare, of countries, this is of parties for the information chaos, the annual summits on information and democracy. Nighat Dad did make a wonderful speech in the second edition of this summit. It was on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly last September. So we are in New York City, exactly. So we have a framework. Now we have to operationalize regarding evaluation of the digital space with the observatory and continue our work with recommendations. So I introduced 2 of our panelists, but the first panelist will be the French Secretary of State for Europe, Laurence Boone, who used to work for OECD. But I have to say that this is by chance. That's no connection here, no specific connection. And she will pronounce the opening statement of this session.
It's a coincidence. Coincidence.
Or perhaps it's not, actually. Who speaks French? And can you raise your hand? I want to know if I speak in French or in English. OK, alors je vais parler français pour le...
I am going to speak French then.
Donc c'est un grand plaisir d'être ici. Pas seulement
It's a great pleasure for me to be here, not only because you have managed to join us for this meeting and to make us meet in the framework of this meeting. It was a real pleasure for me to work with him in the OECD, and also to talk about the requirement for democratic guarantee in the digital communication space. It's one of the major topics right now. We can see that with the war in Ukraine and in many other countries, even in Europe. Those democratic warranties or guarantees which have been set up all throughout our democratic histories, those guarantees have been jeopardized in the information campaigns, those manipulation campaigns which have been initiated by propaganda campaigns, proliferation of misinformation concerning vaccines, for instance, on the social networks, or the drastic reductions to press freedom, to the press freedom defended by Reporters Without Borders, and the vulnerability, economic vulnerability of journalists, which is at the core of the action that you support. Now, to meet all those challenges, France has initiated the Partnership for Democracy and Information here in 2018 during the Paris Forum for Peace. I would like to thank Ireland, Niger, and Albania. And those three countries are added to the other countries. There are 50 countries all in all, and they represent all different regions. Now, this partnership promotes freedom of opinion and expression, the access to free, pluralistic and trustworthy information in the worldwide space of communication and information. Those are guarantees for neutrality, transparency, accountability of digital platforms, and they are at the very base of our European action, particularly in the digital single market. I know that you know about that you are familiar with acronyms like DSA and DMA. In September, during the New York General Assembly, the second Ministerial Summit for Information and Democracy has been chaired by France and Reporters Without Borders, and we have been able to make progress. Various states have committed themselves to support initiatives in favor of trust in journalists based on ethical rules, independence rules, and the point is to make an assessment of the fight against misinformation, particularly by exchanging views within the partnership and encouraging self-regulation practices in the private sector and civil society. I think this is exactly what you're doing, combining government, civil society, and private sectors in order to promote standards. I know that time is short, so I am going to speak very shortly about the Observatory for Information and Democracy that we inaugurate here. I think that you are being very modest, but I think that the IPCC model for climate change is the right model. The point is to assess the new developments in this space, to publish information about new developments on a regular basis for all the members of civil society in order to promote good practices, and maybe to do some name shaming about those who do not perform very well. I think that Angel has done that for the past 15 years within the OECD. I think it's important because at present in Europe, some people talk about illiberal democracies, and that just does not exist. A democracy is a liberal space with free information, and you have chosen the name Observatory, which sets up a link between information and democracy, and the point is to fight against any attack against freedom. Now, this is one of my major priorities as Secretary of State responsible for Europe. I have mentioned our actions in favor of a democratic digital space. We also have the European project for media freedom, which is being negotiated, and I can see that with my European colleagues. I can see that people are becoming more and more aware of the fact that it's important to be proactive at the government level in order to fight against foreign interference, to guarantee the media independence. Now, I think that it's really very important to make it possible to have this freedom of expression in a democratic space. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. You have said so. 3 new countries have decided to support this partnership: Ireland in September, and very recently Niger and Albania. And in a little while, we'll have with us Dirama, the Prime Minister from Albania, and he is going to officially become a member of this partnership for democracy. Now, you are Secretary of State state responsible for Europe. 25 out of 27 European countries, EU countries, are members of this partnership. And in New York, in September, 2 new states have joined this partnership, Uruguay on the one hand, and the United States on the other hand, and that set up a link with the Summit for Democracy organized by President Biden. Thank you so much for your support. You will take the floor again in a little while during the debate. And I would like to give the floor to Ida Dada. She has founded a foundation. She has set up a foundation for digital rights in Pakistan, and she is the head of this organization. She's also vice chairwoman of the Forum for Democracy, headed by civil society in the framework of this partnership. And IGAD is going to talk about the project of Observatory for Information and Democracy. This project is has been led by Angel, and yesterday it was mentioned during the Forum for Democracy.
Well, I'll be speaking in English. I'm sorry, I don't really know French, or I can speak in Urdu. We don't have audience for that. But first of all, I would really like to congratulate you, Christophe, for initiating this in 2018. And I think we have come really, we have made a lot of progress in all these years, and also to the team, Camille and our treasurer, Leon, is sitting here, and all the member states that have joined us. With the observatory, it will be composed of several internal bodies that will grant it collective legitimacy. The board of the Forum on Information of Democracy, which, as you mentioned, I have the honor of being vice chair, will define its strategic guidelines and select the members of the steering committee. The steering committee of the observatory is a vital piece of its governance. It will be composed of 10 to 12 members who will have the important role of guiding and supervising the production of reports. We are happy to announce that the steering committee of the prefiguration group is becoming a nomination committee that will be tasked with identifying the experts who will compose this body. The observatory will also be composed of a stakeholder advisory group with representation from the research community, representative from the member states of the Partnership for Information and Democracy, regulators, civil society and industry, so it will be really like a truly multi-stakeholder model. And this advisory group will share recommendations of possible avenues of the research that the steering committee should follow. The steering committee will then gather working groups that will conduct research, interviews, and will be drafting the chapters of the report. And we aim to publish our first report by the end of 2024, before the annual Summit for Information and Democracy.
Thank you so much, Nigat. This observatory will, in fact, have an activity of meta-research. It will gather the research that is done everywhere and produce a report that is supposed to be the equivalent of the report of the IPCC with very clear evaluations for decision makers. So it will have different functions. The first one will be to help coordinate the research, because there is a lot of research on those topics, but sometimes with research centers that do not speak to each other. So it will have this function, plus it will be a research policy interface. And we also need this. For the information chaos, we do not have the equivalent of the 2 degrees Celsius that we have for the climate change, and that is a clear indicator so it's more difficult to find a clear indicator for those questions and how the social networks, internet can destabilize democracies. But this is this effort that will be done by this observatory. We had a lot of deliverables in this initiative. One of the best ones for me is that the observatory allowed me to meet with you, Andrel. And it was such a wonderful news for me to meet with you and now to work with you, that your leadership is so incredible. And thank you so much. Now that's, and your language will be a surprise to us. Spanish, English, French, something else?
Well, first of all, thank you, Christophe. Thank you for the comments. What happened was not a big surprise. The industry failed to self-regulate. What a surprise. No surprise. We knew it was not going to self-regulate, but we gave it a chance, if you will. But the problem is not that the industry fails to self-regulate. The problem is that the industry poses a very great risk to our daily lives and to democracy itself, which we cherish and we have nursed and we have, built over the years and the decades and the centuries, and we want to keep it like that. And right now it is very seriously threatened because of these unregulated, uncontrolled, unlegislated developments. Now, let me also say that the observatory is place 3. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello. Congratulations on your intervention there with Mr. Macron. It basically plays 3 roles. One is it's the place where the science and the policymakers meet. Now, the problem is that they should meet, that they must meet, that they have to meet. Otherwise, they will be like those proverbial ships crossing in the midst of the night and not looking at each other, not knowing that they have crossed each other. And policymakers have to be fed with the facts so that they can decide then what they really want to do. But first, they have to know what's going on. They have to understand what's happening. I have to say, right now, the policymakers have not done brilliantly. The policymakers have just let the phenomenon grow and grow and grow. And now, maybe it's out of their control, it's out of their reach. But, dear friends, it's never too late to do the right thing, okay? So, we're gonna give it a try, So, we're gonna give... Now, the second is, as Christophe mentioned, a research synthesis. Why? Because this is an area, like everything else today, where there is probably too much information. Maybe too much surplus information. Too much of the information is not focused on the right things. And there has to be somebody who puts it all together and who then chooses what information to digest and then what information is going to be put for the policymakers. And then I would say the last one is a controversial one. A rating agency. A rating agency that is going to be scoring tech corporations and is going to be producing some rankings. And now we're not ready to do that just yet, but we shall, we will. And therefore, when we're ready, we're gonna let you guys know, but it's going to be a big bang, if you will. It's going to be very, very important. So this is, the world loves rankings, you know, they love lists. And then they say, we all say we hate lists, but we actually like them because it makes it easy to understand who is doing better and who is doing worse and all that, and who is falling behind and all. So the idea is eventually to have something that will rank, that will rate, that will be like a rating agency for information and democracy. So basically, what we had was the launch, as was mentioned, where you were and where in New York, and where I have to say a little secret. I will share with you a little secret, but don't tell anybody, please.
This is going live stream.
And that is that this guy here did a very interesting job. He talked to, first of all, dozens of people, then hundreds of people, and then he kept going up and up and up and up until then, lo and behold, the United States accepted to come in. So somehow they were number 48 or 47 or 47, and then Niger and Albania, then now they are 50. So 50 is a good round number, you know. We will hear from the Prime Minister, but I have to say that, of course, somehow it is interesting to have the United States in these things. Huh? So, and Christophe brought them over with a lot of work, and I would like to again congratulate him for that very hard work. Again, this is very exciting, very important. It's going to be absolutely crucial in terms of the implication for the quality of our lives and the quality of our democracies going forward. We're just starting. As Nigar said, we are planning to have the first report by 2024. And what is the report going to be about? It's about, well, it's going to be produced, and once it's produced, everybody's going to be waiting to criticize it, to say it's not worth it, to say its conclusions were, but everybody is going to be around it, and everybody's going to be looking, and everybody's going to be discussing the issue. And that is the most important thing. It is going to be the report for the industry, for the information and democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel. Maybe an opinion poll now. Is there somebody in the room who was not convinced by Angel's speech? Oh, 0%. Everybody was convinced. Thank you so much, Angel. Now, maybe a question for you. First, I would like to welcome the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. We are really glad that you are with us. Later in this session, Albania will officially join the Partnership on Information Democracy, and of course, you will make a speech. But let's continue this panel discussion. Angel said that policymakers failed, but Europe started in the way of regulating the digital platforms.
Absolument.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, very often we criticize Europe for its standards, and it's true that Europe is a group of countries, it's a union that works to guarantee good living conditions for its citizens, and also to have a certain influence outside of Europe. And so if we want to interact with the European Union, we have to adapt to the European standards. And those standards are measured and are compared to what's done in other countries, and that's what you were mentioning earlier. And in those standards, there's the Digital Market Act and the Digital Service Act, and everyone calls them the DSA and DMA. and they are meant to control and regulate platforms. First of all, by protecting data, protecting content, and because data is an intangible asset. And secondly, it looks at the way that media, the same way that the traditional media is monitored and controlled, the same thing needs to happen with digital media. And I think that Christophe could tell us a little bit more about that in detail. But this is one thing that would help us control, guarantee transparency and fight against fake news. There's one point in particular that we need to work on, and that's the funding of the free democratic journalism, which would benefit from your standard. It would be a guarantee of quality, and so we really need to work together on that. I have one question, just one question for all three of you. Who would benefit most from this Observatory on Information and Democracy? The fact it's being created and structured to enable governments to benefit from expertise as well as researchers and civil society. But can you tell us a little bit more about how this will be beneficial and how maybe the European institutes would also take advantage of this, because 60 of the recommendations that have been made by the Forum on Information and Democracy have influenced European legislation, which is in the process of being defined or which has already passed, especially on the European legislation on digital services and the code of behavior against fake news and misinformation. So what about the people who will be taking advantage of this? Who will they be?
I'm hoping that Observatory will take multi-stakeholder approach, and as already mentioned by Engel, the way we are going to work. But I would also like to mention that a lot of work has already been done, and of course we are going to take an approach where we are going to fill in gaps. DSA, DMA is a very good regulatory approach towards holding tech companies accountable, but at the same time, I hope that DSA hold them accountable in a way that it set a global standard for everyone and not just for the European states. And I would like to mention that there are like self-regulatory mechanisms have already been set. I think we need to see how to scale those mechanisms. Regulators, civil society organizations, governments, not only, I would like to say not only in Europe. I think we are really looking forward to do the work that everyone else in the world sort of get benefit from the observatory work. The ranking that has already been mentioned, there is one initiative that I would really like to mention. It's ranking digital rights. My colleague is sitting here, Rebecca, who actually started that, and it has done a lot of work. And I think the more the merrier. I think we really need to scale this work in terms of ranking, but at the same time see that the observatory works in a way that not only European states will get benefit, but everyone else, they sort of follow the best practice and the good precedent.
Ce que Nigadat vient de dire, tout ce que Nigat dit est extrêmement important, mais là, ça l'est particulièrement. On observe que
everything that Nigat does is extremely important, but what you're saying here is that this is not something just for rich countries. Digital issues are very complicated, except in countries where there are autocratic governments that solve the problem very simply. But in countries that have difficulty coming up with standards and understanding this technology. We need to help those people understand the situation. And so what we're doing is we have a lot of requests coming in from southern countries who are asking for help and who are counting on this initiative to help them. Angel.
Le plus faible le pays, le plus nécessaire.
The weaker the country, the more essential this work is. This work is going to be beneficial to everyone. It's going to be beneficial for the governments because there is a we need regulation, we need legislation, we need everyday monitoring, which goes over and above legislation and regulations. Currently, it's the platforms and the companies that are controlling that surveillance, and every once in a while the things backtrack, but they are always looking out for their own interests and not for the interests of society or of the state. So we have to raise the question of the interest of our governments and the need for legislation, and that legislation needs to be positioned between the companies and society in order to optimize, to maximize the benefits, because technology is beneficial to everyone. Technology is beneficial to everyone. But the question is, the problem is that technology without regulation is controlled not by the stakeholders but by the shareholders. And we need to avoid that at all costs. Thank you, Angel. Madam Minister, dear Lawrence, what do you think? Well, thank you. I think there are two things regarding who's going to take the best advantage of this. First of all, it's democracy. Democracy is all about institutions, but it's also a combat, a fight between opponents, and you want to reinforce that relationship. And I think that's extremely important in today's world where, as I said, we're talking about more and more about illiberal democracies. And then there are young people. It's the young people who use social networks as easily, the most easily, and we're running after them all the time, trying to catch up. And so it's you, young people, who are going to be building the content of the future and building the tools in such a way that they be well framed and that we can all trust them. Thank you. So the next steps for creating this observatory, we will put out a call for researchers who will be part of their steering committee, and then we will inaugurate the observatory, and we'll come up with a working plan, a roadmap, so that we can publish our first report in 2024.
So there was a text that was signed by 48 states. Niger just joined, and Albania as well. Minister, we met a few weeks ago. We discussed many things, particularly those digital topics, and you said that you wanted Albania to join this partnership. So that's the 50th state to join us.
I didn't know that the United States have been just coming, but apparently you can't have United States without having Albania. So I was explaining today this morning to the same room that we are loyal to empires. So once upon a time you couldn't have the Ottoman Empire without having Albania, then you couldn't have Stalin without having Albania, then Mao Zedong, and now United States. Let's see how it will go. With the others, didn't went very well. So it's a real pleasure to be here, frankly, because since some time I was very frustrated about the impossibility to see through a way of communication between institutions and the media world, let's say. And then we met with Christophe, and we had a very frank exchange, and I learned about this thing, and I found it absolutely great and very much helpful, with a great potential to bring together people and to create a space where people do not feel the need to protect from each other, but feel the need to cooperate with each other and to create a space where everyone can have its place. My first contact with the media world after we were living in a country that was the North Korea of Europe, completely isolated from the West, isolated from the East. For us, both imperialism and social imperialism were the same, Soviets and Americans. So we never ever dreamed about free speech and free media and all this. My first contact was when I was here in Paris. At that time, I was in my first stay in Paris, and I was refused a visa to go to the United Kingdom. And so, through a friend here, I could write an article for The Guardian. And to my total surprise, of course, we had already made our entry in the free press in Albania, which was a jungle. And I was writing at that time. To my total surprise, I arrive late in my place, and I find a message from The Guardian, whomever was taking care of my article. And the message was, we want to talk to you because we want to check if you are happy with the title we suggest to change. And I said, how possibly they can ask me to do something they can do? To me, it was completely... And then it was too late. The day after, they called again. I thought that they left the message and then they just published. And when the title was completely normal, nothing, even better than mine, so I said, why you had to ask me? You just could publish. And the woman on the other side said, no, it doesn't work like this. We have to check everything with the author. So nowadays, we live in a completely different world, of course, and this challenge you are trying to face is huge, because keeping the balance between the freedom of speech and somehow regulating the freedom of reach, which does not mean necessarily freedom of speech, but it can mean spread of lies and of many other things, is really a big challenge, and is a challenge of our civilization. Because in the name of the freedom of speech, lies cannot be spread like, truths. So all this being said, I am very hopeful that something will be possible to change. And as the minister said very rightly, strengthening both sides, the institutions and the oppositions, meaning not simply the political oppositions, but the citizens, the groups of interest, the youth, everyone that want to have a say, is very, very important And so the balance, if there is a possible balance, will save our humanity. Otherwise, it will be in a very bad place and will be soon in a very bad place. I'm very pessimistic that what might happen if some kind of common sense and regulation will not be found. So I want to consign to you the pride of Albania being the 50th state after the United States. So the ambassador has to do it, I think. This is the procedure.
Hello, everybody. Madame la Ministre, I have the honor and the great pleasure to hand over to you today, in the presence of the Prime Minister of Albania, of the Secretary-General of Reporters Sans Frontières, and of the Chairman of the Observatory on Information and Democracy, the note verbal notifying to the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs of the accession of Albania as a 50th. Yeah, okay. Bon, au nom du gouvernement albanais, j'ai l'honneur et le grand plaisir de vous remettre aujourd'hui, en présence du Premier ministre albanais, du secrétaire général.
In the presence of the Prime Minister of Albania, the President of Reporters Without Borders, and the Chairman of the Observatory on Information and Democracy, the verbal note confirming the accession of Albania as 50th state for the International Partnership for Information and Democracy.
A group photo, and then we will just put an end to this session. Thank you so much for your participation to this session, and please continue to work with us for the mobilization. We need to be supported by the research field, by governments, of course, by donors, of course, also. Thank you. We can be optimistic for democracy, but we have to fight for it. Bye-bye.
And now we have Albania, so we can have everybody else now. Oh, this is done.